City Hall and the Public Works Department, all government buildings. It also will allow for us to pay very key contractors that keep the government open. F&B, which is our water contractor, which is responsible, for the maintenance and upkeep of our water filtration plant, our water distribution system, which is a little over about $120,000 monthly. And if we fail to pay them, then they deal with a multitude of contractors as well to provide certain chemicals and necessary things to properly allow for the plant to function. And if those bills are not paid, if we don't pay those types of contractors, then that will bring our local government to a screeching halt. The monies will also be used to pay our landfill, which I believe is a little over $20,000 monthly to take the trash to the landfill. And if we're unable to make that payment, then now you'll begin to see trash piled up, not only throughout the city, but it puts us in a position to where we'll be dumping and putting trash somewhere illegally. So there's over 1 million in outstanding bills that the city currently has. The $420,000 only addresses the immediate and the most pertinent bills that need to be paid. But the $420,000 will allow for us to continue to operate seamlessly until we begin to get more revenue in, which I'm talking about now. The amount of expected state share revenue, which we'll be receiving that in the next couple months in April, is only $330,000, which has shrunk considerably. In 2005, the city of Benton Harbor was receiving over $1.5 million in state share revenue. But in the most recent state budget, that number went down. So we plan to be receiving that. We will also be receiving an estimated $230,000 in late February from the marijuana revenue through the county. We do receive about $50,000 for the trash collection, and our city manager will deal with the work that he's doing with the Michigan Department of Treasury to address our cash flow issues, which I just want to remind you, the city of Benton Harbor has always had a cash flow challenge. I recently spoke with former Mayor Hightower, my predecessor, and he was saying how he disagreed with the city income tax when we first introduced it in 2013. He said because there was no plan. And at that time, we were in the clutches of emergency management. But he said if we would have had the income tax monies then the emergency never would have been triggered February 26, 2010 by Governor Jennifer Granholm. Because at that time, which is February now, where we've always had the same issue. Fast forward or rewind, we, in 2013, the city of Benton Harbor received a $2.3 million loan, emergency loan, from the state of Michigan. And we received that loan as the emergency manager was exiting. But guess what the monies were used for? To pay vendors. The first emergency manager, when he left, there was only $3,000 in the when the second one left, we had to receive a $2.3 million emergency loan in order to address the bills. So what the city income tax really allows us to do is not have to take out any emergency loan. Mr. Littlewood talked about in the 80s where we had to go to Independence Bank and take out a $1 million loan because they had to issue then. To just talk about the city income tax, which was passed in 2017, and I found this old campaign sign, and if you read it, it says, the tax will help finance the fixing of our streets, alleys, sidewalks, and other issues around the city of Benton Harbor. And when the resolution was passed, it was put in there, not issues, but emergencies, as deemed by the city commission. And the city income tax has been very successful because it has allowed for us to vastly improve our infrastructure. Anybody that rides around the city of Benton Harbor, you can see that our infrastructure has improved significantly within the last 10 years. Lastly, I'll just say that of all of these city income tax communities or cities, the city of Benton Harbor is the only one that earmarked the funds, where there was a restriction placed and a separate account placed. But the other communities, this is common practice. The city of Grand Rapids, over 70% of their general fund is made up of their city income tax. And the bills that we're paying today by or under the guise of emergency is common and standard and best practice for other communities. So there is no vote. There is no having to move the money because the money is already placed in the general fund to address the very issues that we're addressing today. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I will also say that tonight a special meeting was called by Commissioner Deidre Fields, who's present, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Shaquille Turner, to take up the issue of approving the $420,000 to address the pending local government shutdown. I do want to recognize Commissioner Santana Warren of the Second Ward, Commissioner Shannon Henderson of the First Ward. But I, unfortunately or fortunately, will not be at the meeting tonight. I do have a meeting with Governor Gretchen Whitmer at the governor's residence from 4:30 to 5. So that meeting I could not cancel. And lastly, President Trump just signed into place to keep the federal government open. So this is not exclusive to the city of Benton Harbor. Federal government, state government, county government, local governments are struggling. And we have to find ways to eliminate excess. I know that the city manager will be working on the deficit elimination plan, but at the same time, we have to have an aggressive revenue plan because, quite frankly, in the city of Benton Harbor, there's not much to cut. When he came here, we had over 100 plus employees. Now we're down to, I believe, about 60. And a small business is technically 1,500. So we're just a few people away from being recognized as a small business. So we don't have a lot to cut, but we will be frugal. And I want to yield to the city manager of Benton Harbor, Mr. Alex.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Within the framework that we have just set, this situation is basically just managing the business of city. This city, as there has had cash flow problems, and many small cities do, because property tax revenue is one of the major sources of funding that operate small cities. This city has gone through a declining period for an extended period of time in terms of its tax base, and we're attempting to turn that around and go forward. As the mayor mentioned, the income tax is just one of the source of revenue that we should have available to us to use to operate government. As far back as the 80s, I believe it was around 86, when we ran into a cash flow problem and we were attempting to borrow money for a short time to get through the same kind of period. It occurs almost annually around the same period. The city gets winter taxes, the city gets summer taxes, and you get the state share revenues, and you have these periods in between. And if the city has a reserve money that it can fall on during the period, then it doesn't even show up as a problem. But in our case, it does, and has been somewhat aggravated by some occurrences that have taken place. For instance, one of them, prior to the emergency managers coming on, the city's water plant was pumping in the neighborhood of 7.5 to 8 million gallons of water a day. After that was cut off, the city's water customers moved away from the city. We were pumping 1 million gallons a day, but we still have the ability of a larger plant, and we're operating that. I think anyone would recognize that if you had revenue that was coming from that missing 6.5 million to 7 million gallons of water a day, something could change in terms of your cash flow. When I came back this time to local government, initially as the CDBG and Economic Development Director, there was a process already going on which entailed improvements to city streets and infrastructure for grants that were received from the state for market grants. And shortly after, the city had the good fortune to get a $10 million American Rescue Fund grant that helped to smooth things out, and also, I believe it kind of gave a false sense of security, because, as a person, we didn't have to go and call money from income tax before. Well, naturally, you don't have to if you got $10 million sitting in the bank. But as that money was used, the mayor mentioned $5 million plus of it to address these cash shortfalls and so forth, that both were from COVID as well as the normal. That money drew down, and when that money, last of the money was used and gone, we went back to reality. And that reality involves normal operations where you get winter taxes, you get state share revenues, you get summer taxes, and you have these ups and downs. And that's basically what we're dealing with. The U.S. government operates on income tax. State government operates in a lot of it on income tax. There's nothing abnormal about that. The process that we're trying to do here is to get and keep the situation under control. I've been working for some time now with the Department of Treasury of the state of Michigan regarding this cash flow situation. They have been working with us, and as a matter of fact, had a conversation with them yesterday afternoon in terms of what, what's going on and what's taking place. Because to activate the use of our income tax for other, as the mayor said, we determined an emergency. Emergency does not have to be the same as crisis unless something out of the ordinary occurs. So that's where we are with this. And if money is not available, then there becomes a crisis. There's no reason it should not be available. It is the city's money, just as you have a roads and streets fund, general fund, the utility fund, and an income tax fund. All of this is the city's. It's all part of the same financial operation, just with different designated purposes, but they work together. There's a shortfall in utility, we pick it up in general fund. Shortfall in the road fund, as there is, because we had to pay back $1.5 million on the work that was done with the grants. But if something happens and we got to spend money for roads and there's money for roads done, general fund takes care of it. So basically, this is how we're moving forward here. It's going to take, because of the number of these occurrences, as I mentioned, there was a situation in terms of loss of water customers. We've been working with Eagle now for the last several years on areas of concern that we had in terms of improving our water operations. Some of these have required us to spend money to do things like backup operations and so forth that were not budgeted or planned for, yet they needed to be done. We did them. It came out of the general fund. It was not money that was budgeted, but we still had to pay it out of the general fund. That affected our cash flow. Same thing happened with the legal costs associated with the water system. When I did the budget for last year, at that point, it was my understanding that the courts had dismissed the city from one of those significant lawsuits. We didn't plan on having to now defend that, but somewhere in between on that day and that year, the public courts overturned that, and suddenly we were back in the fray with legal fees coming for doing depositions and witnesses and whatnot and so forth. It was unbudgeted. It affected our cash flow. We had to pay those things. We still owe some over $300,000 to the law firm Logan for the wonderful work that they did. So this is just what the situation is. This $420,000 is not the last of the money that we're going to need to address this cash flow matter. We're going to have a cash flow problem through September, October, and we'll be having to use additional cash from other sources to try and help get through this. Again, the fact that we use the term emergency in order to activate use of the income tax does not mean crisis unless we have non-cooperation among ourselves. All we have to do is follow the guidance that we get. I'm working closely, as I said, with Treasury to help make sure that we're doing this stuff and doing it right. And with that.
So our last speaker will be, before our questions, will be Attorney Sarah Seneca, who will speak to the legality of what's being done. I've heard some people say, oh, they commission, what are they doing? You know, this is illegal. And she'll just address that we're not robbing Tina to pay ticker. No pun intended.
Thank you, Mayor. being here today. So everything that you've heard today leads to a set of facts that need to be considered by the city commission. And I want to be clear that it's a legislative decision as to whether or not an emergency exists such that this money should be transferred to pay general fund bills. Now, many other cities have income taxes. We are not the only city to have an income tax. And lots of other cities have, as the mayor mentioned, they have their income tax revenue as a large portion of their regular budget. The city has restricted, and we're unique in that way because we have restricted these funds by resolution of the city commission. So because that has happened, the city commission has to vote on whether this money can be used for the general fund bills. But this is a legal activity. There's nothing wrong with this. Like I said, other cities have income taxes that they just naturally have as part of their general fund budget. So I'm thankful that that several of our commissioners called a special meeting tonight. I would like to thank them for doing that. Commissioner Fields, I see you here. I know our Mayor Pro Tem was part of calling that special meeting. So this is just part of the legislative process. I really want to emphasize that. This is what city commissions do. They ask questions, they get information, and they make decisions based on the information they have. And I think beyond that, this is a decision that will be made tonight by the legislative body as it should be done.
So with that being presented and shared, are there any questions before we conclude the press conference? If you could please state your affiliation before your question.
WSBT 22, what if the funds aren't approved? What's the next step?
So that's a great question, and that was something that I asked. We want to recognize around the Hilda Grant, which is from our Plainville Wind team, I believe, which is the largest accounting firm in the state of Michigan.
A large one.
A large. So that was one of the questions that I posed to her, and she shared with me that it would affect our ability to make payroll. I believe we would make it through February, but beyond that, we would have workers unable to pay, which would trigger a state emergency, which could cause a emergency manager to be sent to the city of Benton Harbor, which is what happened in 2010. Because as the city manager said, the money was not there, so an emergency became a crisis, and we lost control of the government. But sanitation, our ability to plow, our ability to, if there was a fire, our ability to fight fires, our ability to provide public safety, I mean, it would be an official local government shutdown. Yes, sir.
Sorry, ABC 57, is this situation that you just described basically looked at from your perspective as kind of the worst case scenario that could potentially happen?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you have people calling 911 because of a crime, emergency, and we can't respond because we don't have the manpower in our police department, or if there's a fire and we don't have the manpower, because our public safety department is a duality, where our public safety officers are our firefighters. It's one and the same. So if we lose one man, that impacts our ability to provide safety as well as provide fire protection. What that would do to homeowners, to businesses, drive up insurance, or they may not even be able to get insurance because if you can't provide fire protection, then I mean, the ramifications of this is, you haven't even heard the technical, but I'm just sharing some very basic things that would happen.
Why is this local government shutdown a possibility at the moment?
Because we haven't moved 420,000.
I have one. Go ahead.
Emma Brock, WNDU. Sorry, one second. actually, did somebody have
Yeah,
a
I
question?
do.
Yeah, you can go.
I actually have a question for Mr. Little. One of the commissioners said that they didn't approve it just because they didn't want to, but they wanted to see a plan, more of it laid out. Do you have a plan that's more laid out for them to understand what the funds are gonna be for?
I do have a plan that is a continuous plan that we're working on. And that's, again, what we're working on with Treasury to try and ensure that we get through the next 3 years and not have crises. But it requires that we work cooperatively together. Within just a 3 or 4 week period, no one's going to fully understand all the detail of that. In fact, I anticipate in the next few weeks, Treasury, I'm asked them to come down to work and share with the commissioners what they're doing and how we're doing, and their awareness of what's happening out there trying to help us.
So, just to add, there was a itemized list provided to city commissioners, our request. But also, as the manager mentioned, we're blessed to have a very active and inquisitive group of new commissioners who want to provide fiscal responsibility, accountability at every level. So hopefully what was requested was provided, so a decision can be made. I'm gonna come back.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Yeah, just to clarify, when was the general fund approved for this previous year?
So the fiscal year runs from July 1 to, so we're still in the same budget cycle.
So I know you addressed some of the legal fees, but how did we get to $420,000 of funds that you guys need help paying for? How did that happen just in the span of a few months?
So our accounting department, like I said, there's over $1 million in payables. But what our accounting department did was pull out the most pertinent and the most time sensitive, is a better word, that needs to be paid like immediately. You know, like the utilities. You don't pay AEP. You know, we shut off at 10 a.m. So, or our gas. You know, so these bills need to be paid. F&B, we're providing water to Big Township this time. So if our water department is shut down, then not only does it affect our residents, but it also affects others. So,
When was this resolution written up then?
so the resolution was presented this past month.
When was it realized that you guys needed that much funding?
This is, as the manager said, has been ongoing. So this has been a discussion previously. But this also goes back to December, November, where we saw the cash flow time flow, where, as we said, from November to December, January, February, historically, there's always been a cash flow issue in between summer taxes, winter taxes. So what Mr. Little attempted to do was get ahead of it by working with our accounting department, working with Treasury, and finding what needs to be paid immediately, presented to the city commission at the last meeting, but we just needed more clarity and questions, I believe, in order to move forward. Does that help?
Yeah.
Louise?
How much money is in the utility fund and general fund? I know in January there was a meeting and it showed those funds just a dash, but it was verbally said there's money in those funds just on the bill. So how much money is in those funds?
As of today, between the two, there's about $350,000.
So I want to echo the words of Ms. Hilton, we're at about 350,000.
Between the two homes right now.
But the income tax, I believe, is about 1.9, 1.7 million. And the unique thing about the income tax, in some cases, people pay more in income tax than they pay in property tax. And as I looked at the initial resolution, cities lost the personal property tax. So at one point, cities received personal property tax as well as property tax. But the personal property tax was phased out under Governor, Snyder, under his administration. So that is one of the reasons why the income tax is so important, because if we're gonna lose personal property tax, which covers machinery and et cetera, then that's a huge hole for the city. So the income tax was a way to put some source of revenue there to make up for that. And the residents, thank the Lord, passed it, and we're here today. We can continue.
I
Yes,
have another question. I know that as of December 31st, the Fairpoint 5 agreement is no longer, so you no longer get money from the Anna Harbor shows and places like that. How much money was the city getting from the Fairpoint 5 agreement?
boy, that's zero.
It all went to ground fee.
What about income tax?
Income tax would be different, but as far as property tax, that was, the majority of it was captured by the ground fee.
So again, the only revenue that we would have received from the hotel or from the other properties is income tax. And that's why, again, the income tax is so critically important for the future. Because as Senator Peters shared with me in his chamber, growth is our solution. So this is why we're actively trying to work with developers, bring new housing developments, bring new businesses, so we can bring the water customers and get more on the tax roll, so we can get more revenue. So at some point, and I don't know if I'll be at City Hall, but we don't have this cash flow issue during this late period.
Two questions for you. The first one's for both of you. You guys both use words like crisis and emergency. I know you guys have chosen those words specifically, and I know you're not doing it to set fear in anybody, but it is a very serious situation. How, in your own words, how dire of a situation is this at the moment?
Well, and the manager can speak to it as well. This is an emergency in that it needs to be done now. So, if the fire alarm went off right now, we need it back. Nobody can, nobody has to be hurt. Nobody, but we have to act. And if you don't act, then you're going to have a bigger problem. So we're in a position now to where the manager is sounding the alarm. There's an emergency. As I pointed here, the word issues was used, or issue. And they said when we did a resolution with mayor, we need to have more definition where not just issues, maybe emergency is emerging. And since it was a team effort, I said, you know what, let's use emergency as deemed by the city commission. So that's why we left the vote, but that's why emergency was used. But we don't want an emergency to turn into a crisis. And that's why we have such meetings.
And I think another thing that everyone has to understand, an operation in city government is budget is finances. It's dynamic, it's not static. It constantly changes. A month ago, someone was raising concerns about how we were addressing the plowing of the streets and so forth. I said at that time, we're gonna do what's necessary to try and keep the streets open, keep them safe. But at the same time, you've got to understand in this climate change situation, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I've got to have revenue to get through as many snows as come between now and spring. Overtime, salt, all that goes with it is increasing constantly as we keep getting these snows and keep having to work overtime and clear the streets and do these things. When I first came to the city back in '84, we had over 5,000 people here. Now I believe it's down around 3,500 or so, and for the first time, we're turning that around. Now we're putting more housing units back in, and we're gonna continue that, and we're gonna escalate that, so that as the mayor says, we rebuild the tax base, rebuild the population, water customers, income tax, and the rest. That's how you do it. And all the time you're getting these plans in Equal Land, things are still going on a daily basis that you have to deal with.
Mr. Little,
Yes.
while you're still there, in a perfect world for each of you, what would you like to see happen? I know that you will not be at the meeting, but what would you guys, in a perfect world, like to see happen?
For the good of the city and the citizens, even in an imperfect world, we like to see the commission approve the transfer and we move forward in our city.
I would like to be able to tell the governor, she asked me, is there gonna be a local government shutdown in Vietnam after all of the work, all of the money, all of the commitment that my administration has done for this city? Is it really gonna shut down? In a perfect world, I would tell her that, no, it will not go. And the city of Decatur is on the mend, and will keep. So with that, we're gonna